It's 11 degrees and you still want to go for a ride. Yeah, you may have the clothes and the proper materials to keep your body from freezing, but what about the bike? Yeah, the body portion is very important, but the bike itself, it is too as well. As you can see, everything's shrinking in the cold. We review that after this. Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles. Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin, the guy. Obviously, I have a garage shop. Taking scary how to use bikes one bike at a time. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy on this old bike series. So we're going to go outside, as you can see, and talk about cold temperatures and how they affect the bike itself. We know how it affects ourselves, right? Because right now I'm standing at 11 degrees and it was colder and I'm shivering with a hot cup of coffee to keep me going. Well, when we're talking about bikes themselves, they're going to perform differently in the colder temperatures than you would on your normal day-to-day above freezing. So those are kind of things that if you haven't ridden before in freezing temperatures, it's probably good to be mindful of these things. This also relates not just to road bikes as well as mountain bikes and also gravel bikes. So those things you might want to consider. Also, safety is a big, huge concern because you can get hurt, and plus the ground is really hard when it's this cold. So any kind of tobacco bobble or whatever fall over, it's going to actually hurt you and the bike, maybe more so than normal conditions. Talking about the bike itself, let's just dive into this. So what's the functional portions of the bike that you need to be concerned about? Well, shifting is one, braking is another. Some people are kind of concerned, well, does the temperature affect the actual frame itself? No, actually it doesn't. It may a little bit, but you're not going to have a extra fatigue or cracks or any of that nature with this extreme temperatures. Reason being, those materials work actually still pretty well in colder temperatures. So I'm talking about steel, aluminum, and carbon fiber. And some misnomers about carbon fiber being a dainty material. It's very strong material, as well as it's very versatile. And just to prove that fact, Boeing has made the 787 Dreamliner jet, which is a really nice jet. It's made out of carbon fiber framing, and with that material being way in the high and extreme colder heat fluctuation temperatures, it actually outperforms aluminum. So with a carbon fiber frame, you don't have to worry about that. But we do have to worry about is, guess what? Grease. And any kind of grease point on a bike is going to be, well, not as smooth at a colder temperature, right? It gets a little sluggish like the rest of us when it's really chilly. So when you're looking at those kind of things, what is grease on the bike? Well, hubs is one, got bearings and grease there for most of the case. Bottom bracket's another one, and also a headset for steering, that kind of thing. So when you're looking at those particular situations, it is going to slow it down. It will warm up when it actually moves a little bit more, so once you get a little bit faster and so forth. But the things are still going to be affected regardless of your pedaling and the moving of the bearings is the cables. If you have a cable system, a lot of these cable systems will have like a grease inside them, which will slow down the actual movement of the cable, which will make the shifting hesitate as going up and down. So when you're riding, you want to be more mindful when you're shifting, going up and down, anticipation of a slow reaction. That means don't be grinding. Really, in the summertime, you're hammering, you're doing off-road riding, you're grinding. Well, for shifting in the winter and very extreme cold temperatures, you want to anticipate that shift. So you hit that click and you kind of not force it, you just let it drive into the next gear. Also, the contaminants you got to watch out for. Snow and ice kicking up in your drivetrain, that can cause some problems where it might bind up. So therefore, you want to make sure your drivetrain has a proper lubricant on it so the chain doesn't react in a weird way. Yeah, let's review some of that up close. Pardon the interruption, there is more. More you say? Push the more button. Push it. Push it! I dare you to push it! Once you push that button, you get more details about the video you are watching, in addition to all the tools that I use in the shop, as well as suggestion for improving your ride. In addition to help me provide advocacy in the cycling community, also links to other social media accounts as well as my website to find the products I actually sell and other insights in the industry. Other videos linked below. Extend your cycling experience here on YouTube. And now back to your original programming. So those for us that dare to ride in the cold temperatures, these are the things you want to be looking into. So the chain itself in the colder temperatures, the lube, this is a wax system on mine, which is going to behave a little bit different than your actually wet lubes. But the wet lubes do get kind of a little thicker. But when you actually are moving in motion, you're going to have that slower hesitation, which I was talking about in shifting. Reason being is these cables they're grease lined inside, which is going to slow down that actuation. Also, the pivots itself has a light grease to it as well, in addition to the jockey pulleys. So all those little things is going to cause that little bit of hesitation to go into those gears, going up and down, especially going down when you want to go a little faster. It's going to be a little slower. Also, in addition to on these systems here that have grease, the shifters themselves has a greasing pulse and so forth on it as well. So you're finding the temperature of cutting through that grease. So again, you want to anticipate that. So when you're doing your micro shifting in the back, you're going to have those hesitations. Well, also you want to really be considering into is if there's any splash up of water or slush getting in here, that's going to change the behavior. Just like in your mountain biking and so forth, you're going to have those kind of contaminants and so forth. It'll cut through a lot of it, but you just don't want to be grinding down on it, because if it does catch, it may take this derailleur and rip it off. So just like those extreme elements. And if you're a road rider and you're not used to that, those contaminants affecting your drivetrain, because the mountain bikers probably are, that's something you want to be a little bit mindful when you're shifting. Also, another thing too is your front shifting. It's going to be slower as well to react as well, going up and down. But mainly it's the rear you're going to be mostly in most of the time. And also the chain itself, it's going to, you want to make sure it's lubed. Dryer chains may have a problem. But also with the wax, looking at the wax system that I have right here on mine, it doesn't seem to be affected with these extreme temperatures, getting a stiff links or binding up and that kind of thing. And granted, most of the people are going to be riding in extreme temperatures. You're probably not going to be riding any colder than this, which is about 11 degrees Fahrenheit. If it does get colder, that really affects your breathing and so forth. So you got to be really careful to cover up. And this temperatures right now, if I was riding, the wind chill would knock it down to the point which would get frostbite at any exposed skin. You want to make sure that it's covered up, and also use Vaseline in those exposed areas for protection for riding. So that's kind of the drivetrain portion of it. You want to be mindful about and be protective when you're actually riding in these colder temperatures. Let's talk about braking. Oh yeah, braking. If you ever had a situation where you hit the brakes and they're not there and you just keep going, I have dreams about that, of just sliding down the mountain biking back in the day. Well, these brakes, they usually work pretty well, but the colder temperatures is going to harden up your padding pads on the brake itself. Also, the actuation is going to be a little bit slower. It's really not the brake system itself that's going to cause you the problem. It's going to be that splash up of water and ice and contaminants. And when these get boogered up with like any of those things with a little bit of dirt, they're not going to brake as well. Even with the V-brakes on mountain bikes, I've had situations where they've iced up and I'm just going. I'm not going to stop at all. So when you're doing those rides and so forth, you want to tap them slowly to kind of hopefully break free any kind of buildup that's been going on there on those road rides and the cyclocross rides, that kind of thing, or gravel rides. And in addition to, you want to make sure you can stop. So periodically going through that ride, you want to anticipate a kind of brake check, right? Like you do in your car sometimes, but not go before you find out you're on black ice and crashing. That leads me to the other thing, tires. If I don't have a clean path that's pretty dry at this time of year, I'm not going to be riding on the skinnier tire. I might be riding on a cyclocross in addition, or a gravel bike that has more of a knob. You want to be careful. It's like riding on ball bearings the whole ride. And those little ice patches may have little grooves in them, you may not see it. That will take your wheel and kind of toss you around a little bit, if not off your bike completely. So be very mindful of those little areas that may have the known covers, and also snow blows over those areas where it can have those grooved areas of ice, and you may not know it and just end up going down. So you want to be careful and very mindful of that too. But with braking, diligently. Also with disc brakes, yeah, they're supposed to be better in worse conditions, but also they're a fluid as well. So those fluids are not going to be as highly responsive as those disc brakes are in warmer temperatures. So in addition to icing up the brakes and so forth, might slow you down. They may perform a little bit better in conditions like this, but they still have their limitations. Just keep that in mind. So you decided to go out there and you do a venture ride out there in the cold because you just have cabin fever, which is crazy. So you survive that ride and you learn like, oh, I need to layer up my shoes, make sure there's so my toes don't freeze, or have better gloves or hand warmers and that kind of thing. There's all these kinds of things that help you do those experiences and those rides in the winter. And the bike will perform to with some limitations, but you want to be mindful for those things when you do ride. Well, clipping in and out too is a clipless thing. You get contaminants in there. You want to be careful about that as well. And there's also another grease point inside those pedals, so it's just going to be kind of a stiff experience in a sense. But when you're talking about like fat bikes, they're really designed for doing, snow riding and so forth in that case. And if you're doing that kind of riding or just getting into it, you want to keep in mind of those things. So you've done your ride. Now what? You get home and you're like a frozen sickle, and your bike is too, and it's coated with everything is horrible for a bike in the wintertime on there. So it all depends where you're at. If you're in places where they heavily salt the roads for the snow and so forth, and you're riding those roads that the salt water is just spraying up on us, it is a very good idea just to rinse your bike off. I know you're not going to be able to do it outside with a hose because it's 11 degrees. It's going to freeze. It's going to be a bicycle sickle. So you don't want to do that. You're going to have to go in your garage and kind of let it thaw out and let all that gunk go off of there. What you could do is some people, they actually take it into their bath, and you can disassemble the bike, take the wheels off and the frame, and kind of set it in your bathtub. And if you don't have a spray nozzle from your shower head or whatever, you can take like a bucket of water or cups of water and do a bath and kind of just rinse it off. What you're trying to do is get all that salt contaminants off the wheels. And when you wash the bike, wash it from the tubes down here, like rinse it. I'm not talking about submerging it by any means, just running water over it to get all that gunk off, salt, matte chloride, any of that kind of gunk you want to get off the bike, because what that does, if it sits on your drivetrain, that salt is going to do the same thing it does to cars. It's going to eat at everything. And when it comes to the time to work on those particular components and pieces, as a mechanic, my experience of this was in Michigan, where they that's all they do is salt the roads up there. The bikes up there that were ridden in the winter are just, they're seized up. I mean, I have not used so much PU plaster in my life, and I'm still probably a little high from it. And that was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So when you're looking at with that kind of scenario situations, you want to preserve your drivetrain and your rest of your bike and the wheels to prevent all that corrosion to come up. Yes, definitely just use like some just water or warm water so you're not freezing your hands again, and that'd be a good way to warm up your fingers too. And you can rinse the wheels off individually in the tub, make sure it drains off, and you do the drivetrain and the front of the bike here. You won't have to worry about the shifters and so forth up. You just pretty much from the seat post clamp down and the headset tube down. You don't want to put anything up in this area too. Also, that's a mental note, if you're a indoor rider, like have a trainer and so forth, your body sweat. I mean, you usually don't sweat on your bike that much while you're riding during the daytime or during the summer, when you're outside. And when you're in a trainer, you're dripping, right? You want to make sure you cover that area where you're dripping on the bike, because your sweat turns into like acid to a bike. I've had stems, handlebars, under the bar tape, it corrodes because it has, besides the salt in your sweat, there's ammonia, I believe, where it really kind of cuts into a lot of the parts and componentry. So if you're taking that bike, that's your trainer bike, and you're taking it outside, you want to make sure it's covered up. And one of those things at the beginning of the season, you want to switch out, especially if you're sweating on it a lot, switch out the bar tape to new bar tape and get the bar cleaned up underneath. The bar tape is usually water preventive, but since the wrap is not completely a complete seal over the bar, it will seep underneath those overlaid laps and cut into the bar itself. And I've seen, like, there's one bike I worked on in the 90s. There's like this crust, and I was trying to clean the crust off. That was salt deposit from the person riding. It was super ew. I mean, ugh. So yeah, get a towel. They make little kind of bike bra things that go on top that catch all that sweat. Wash those periodically because they'll get nasty. That kind of thing. So, you know, indoor to outdoor to riding, cycling's supposed to be fun. If you're just getting into it and you want to get out there and do some riding in the winter time, you're just like, oh, I got all this gear, let's go. Keep mindful of those bullet points about your drivetrain, your brakes, and all those kinds of things. Go out there and anticipate it, slow roll. Don't go very fast, and anticipating kind of stopping or shifting and all that. You should be fine, but it is a hazard, so be careful. Wear a helmet and make sure you wear the proper protection to protect the hands, which right now they are freezing cold. And hey, you know what? Hope you, if it's nice enough in your neck of the woods to go do a nice ride, go out there and do it. Check out other videos that I have for tech tips and so forth, and this old bike, and also topics and so forth. Smash buttons below, you know the drill. Thank you for spending time with me outside of the garage. Until next time, have a wonderful day.